Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the DMI Economic Development Committee. We've got a few more people coming in here. Hope you're all having a great morning. It is nice and warm outside. The bike ride was a lot easier this morning, a lot easier. Hope everyone's doing well. We are going to begin, as always, with our chair, Ann New Year Morrison. Good morning, Ann. How are you?
Good morning. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us for our November Economic Development Committee meeting. We have a great panel with many thanks, especially to Scott Forrester on our committee for helping to organize this panel today. I don't have any announcements before we begin this panel, but Jason, I imagine you might have a couple.
I do. Okay. Sorry, we're letting a few more people in here at the same time. We have a couple quick announcements for the organization. Tonight, we have a fantastic event. We are co-hosting with our friends at the Out Professional Engagement Network, also known as OPEN, for a panel discussion on how we make Madison livable for everybody. It's an amazing conversation on BIPOC, transgender leaders in our community that will be leading this panel. It's at 2238 Park Street. That is the UW South Madison Partnership location, a great location right on Park Street there. We hope you can join us. Excellent panel. All the information, I think, Madeline, I saw something pop up just in the chat right now for you all to register. We hope we see you tonight. Also, we have our next in our series of the Madison-Milwaukee Downtown Exchange. We're going to be talking about big ideas on Wednesday, December 8th at 8 o'clock. That'll be virtual. More information, we're securing panelists now. We should have that information soon. We also have one other event we're putting together as we speak, which is a last minute event, but I think very important for many of you. With our friends at Michael Best, we're going to put on a panel discussion on December 1st at 8 o'clock on navigating the vaccine mandates and policies. So legal perspective here, important for a lot of the companies. So we'll look for more information. We'll get that day or two. And so we will see all then at the US Bank building. All right, that is all anything else from you, Ann?
No, that's it. Thanks for joining us on this special day. We're still letting a few more people in, including, I think, one of our speakers, if anyone has the power. Sorry.
Ben Hansen was in the waiting room.
Unfortunately, there's nobody in the waiting room right now. So
Okay, I'll check with him. Maybe he's
okay, perfect. Sorry.
He might be in another Zoom office.
Oh, Ben, are you here?
Yeah, I'm here, Scott. Yeah.
Okay, great.
Oh, perfect. Oh, we got you under Max. So we'll fix your name here right now.
All right. So again, we want to thank Scott Forrester in particular for helping us to coordinate this. Scott is with Think Forward's fractional CFO and with Starting Block, and has been really just a huge bridge to the tech community. I think for DMI, he's new to Madison, relatively new, but I really appreciate you bringing this panel together for us.
Happy to do it.
Thank you. Jason, I think we're going to begin by letting our panelists introduce themselves, and then Jason and I are going to take turns grilling them with some really hard questions here. And at the end, I'm sure we'll have time for a few more questions as well. So with that, I guess in order of agenda, Nora, Rogan, Schmidt, do you want to introduce yourself? We recently heard from you, but not everyone was probably at that meeting.
Yeah, thanks, Ann. Yep, my name is Nora Rowan Schmidt, and I am the executive director at Starting Block in Madison. We've got a lot going on today, including an event this evening, so I'm a little bit scattered. I apologize for that, but really eager to be here, appreciate the opportunity, and looking forward to the conversation.
Thank you, Nora. And Matt Fergus, somewhere on my shuffleboard here.
Yeah, right here, Ann. Hey, everyone. My name is Max Fergus. I am the CEO for a company called Loom. We are a music technology company, also out of Starting Block Madison. Company was actually founded out of the UW-Madison entrepreneurial department about 3 years ago before I graduated school, and ultimately decided to pursue the business full-time after graduation. And so really, really happy to be here with everyone and getting the chance to answer some difficult questions from Ann and Jason.
We're really misleading in this level of difficulty. Forrest, you're up at that. Forrest.
Thanks, Anne. I'm Forrest Woolworth. I'm the Chief Operating Officer of PurBlue. We make mobile games for iPhone and Android. In particular, our most recent one is a partnership with Disney. We have about 65 employees all around the country. And also I'm been very active and involved in the entrepreneurial community as a whole over the last 10 years with Capital Entrepreneurs, which is a peer group for medicine entrepreneurs involved with Starting Blocks as a founder and board member, and also the Forward Festival.
Thank you. And Ben Hansen.
Hi, yeah, I'm Ben, Director of Capital Entrepreneurs, and founder of Virtually United, which a company that created virtual conferencing software. So we've worked with like a decent amount of just people trying to, figure out their remote working situation. So that plus Capital Entrepreneurs.
Great.
Yep.
Thank you all for being here. Jason, you want to kick them off with the first question? And I don't know if we want to do kind of round robin or see how far we get with these.
Absolutely. And don't worry, Max, we did not change up the questions on you all. So we've kept them easy. So we really want to talk about the tech scene in downtown, right? An important sector, really important conversation for how downtown grows. We've seen this at Cap East. You all talked about, obviously, Nora at Starting Block and Forrest is on the board. There's just so much happening with the tech scene in downtown. I think many of our members are just not fully aware of what's happening. So the first question is, for any of you, for Max or for Ben, for Forrest, Nora, what does the tech scene look like right now downtown? And what are its strengths and weaknesses?
Just kind of starting out, just kind of some quick, so I've been in the scene with PurBlue and kind of the entrepreneurial tech space for about 12 years now. And over that time, it's definitely evolved quite a bit. And most of it is centered around downtown for sure. I think went from pretty nascent, 10 plus years ago to definitely now. There's definitely a lot more activity, both across the board, everything from like startups, like early stage startups, but then all the way to like larger, more established tech companies and like satellite offices of like the bigger tech companies, stuff like Google and all that kind of stuff. So it's definitely grown a lot. It's definitely seems fairly vibrant as a whole, and I think Madison has continued to like increase its presence nationally as like becoming known as like an emerging hub for tech in general, and that's been really cool to see that and kind of be part of that growth over the last 10 years or so. And I think I think so that's definitely been cool to see, and then just kind of seeing what the next phase looks like, both from a chapter perspective as stuff continues to grow and mature, but then also like what the remote world looks like kind of in the new kind of world here, and what that both opportunity and potential risks are kind of around that for places like Madison.
Yeah, I would double down with Forrest for sure. I think the growth is really obvious, right? We can, see the statistics, even of millennials, right, coming to Madison or ultimately staying in Madison after school. I think that's absolutely crucial. I think, demographically, our tech scene is really strong, and I think there's probably a very heavily correlation between the strength of our tech scene downtown and, even its relationship with the university itself. I think, the question is really probably less about how far we've come and probably so much more about how far we can really still go, I think, for Madison's entrepreneurial ecosystem and tech scene. I think from an industry vertical standpoint, that's where we still have so much more room to blossom, right? It's so exciting to see such strong healthcare and biotech and life science really downtown at the research park, even in the middle of downtown. But I think in other areas, we still have, a long way to go, right? I want to see, the next PurBlue, the next, whether it's consumer gaming, other tech industries that I think are also going to continue to help us attract stronger talent externally and continue to bring them into Madison as well. And I think from that perspective, it'll be really exciting to see what the next 5 years looks like.
Ben or Nora, anything else you want to add to that?
Looks like Ben's still muted. So the one thing that I would say is that, what we're seeing at Starting Block, we are at capacity for all of our closed door offices right now. And we have a lot of activity happening in the building. A lot of people are reaching out with really great ideas who are looking for assistance and different services. So the pandemic certainly has not slowed down creativity or inspiration for new entities. So it's a really great time to be part of the scene in Madison.
Yeah, and then I think everyone said a lot of good stuff already, so I'll just say, like, the Capital Entrepreneurship membership has definitely been, really growing pretty fast in the last, like, half a year here. So, I mean, things are just kind of really turning back on recently. It's been great to see that growth here with us. So.
Thank you, guys. We are Downtown Madison Inc. So we are focused on downtown and really see the strength of downtown as being vital to the strength of our overall regional economy. And so, the next question was really why is a strong downtown important to tech companies? And I guess, on the other hand, if a weak downtown, what does that do to your ability to kind of operate in this larger region? Was the question.
I'd be happy to take that one just to start things off. I think having a strong downtown with lots of active businesses, lots of things going on, vibrant scene is always really attractive anytime you're trying to attract entities to start their tech companies or their startups just in general in Madison. Having cool things to do when you're not working, which for many folks in tech, they are working 15-hour days most of the time. But when there are active scenes and good, vibrant places to hang out and good places to live, affordable housing, all kinds of other things, it leads to positive outcomes. So I think all of the good work that's happening in Madison right now to make sure that the downtown is a place that continues to be vibrant only helps the scene and helps it thrive.
Yeah, I think I would add that it's all about creating the nexus or like the center of gravity, and having a strong center of gravity is like super critical. I think in general, like the downtown has been the core of a lot of the tech stuff that has emerged over the last 10 years, and is currently definitely the center of like the tech world in Madison. And I think that's critical. That's having that center place where people can, as a hub, is like really important. I think that's exactly what we wanted to do with like Starting Block, from like the entrepreneurial perspective of like having a center of gravity for entrepreneurial resources and entrepreneurial pieces is part of the reason for part of the kind of the thesis for Starting Block too, and having that as a meta with like the downtown as a whole core, I think is good. And that's just also even more important again, as the whole the remote piece of things really drives up the choices of like where you can start your companies and where you can grow companies and where you can work as employees. And I think that puts even more emphasis on having really strong community, really strong, vibrant places you want to be and want to live, and then you will grow your companies where those places are. And I think that's again where it's a good opportunity, where Madison has always been really strong at great place to live, good cost of living, all this kind of stuff. We all probably, I love about Madison. I'm sure we all love about Madison. And now that's, we have that piece there. We need to maintain and continue to grow that piece. And I think that's, where we can potentially attract more people here, where location previously they may be tied to San Francisco or other bigger hubs. They can come here and start their companies or work for other companies. And that's a big, again, on the opportunity side, that's really important. And downtown is, I would say, the core of the nexus of a lot of that.
Yeah, Forrest, I think you absolutely nailed it. I think this is probably one of the most important questions for sure. I think at the end of the day, having a strong downtown tech and entrepreneurial ecosystem is the reason why companies ultimately are going to stay or they're going to leave. We look up to the companies that have ultimately come before us, right? For Loom, when we were coming out of school, that really was PurBlue, right? That was Fetch Rewards or was Eat Street. It's the same reason that we want to go to school at a place that has a good graduation rate or is nationally ranked, right? Or people want to work at companies that are, popular in, different technology circles, right? When we came out of school 3 years ago, I didn't know much about Madison's downtown tech ecosystem. And, our initial reaction was that we ultimately wanted to leave, right? We wanted to go to LA or to San Francisco, surround ourselves with people that we were ultimately, thought were like us. And so we didn't know what it looked like after graduation, right? And I think that, there's an element of like traction that we're trying to really continue to grow in Madison, right? Like, it's really cool to have, 1 or 2 or 3, unicorns popping up across the state of Wisconsin. But, if you've seen what's happened in like Utah over the course of the last year, they've funded like 12 new unicorns in the last year. And now you're seeing just waves of capital, new venture capital firms coming up, and companies are flooding to the space, right? So it's not good enough to just, have 1 or 2 wins. It's about really being able to form some stronger traction so that so that the members even of this group do hear about all the exciting things that are ultimately going on. If the tree falls in the woods and no one is there and no one hears it, how is the next entrepreneur going to know that Madison is the place where they want to ultimately start their company?
Yeah, and that traction piece is like super critical. I think it's, kind of thinking about it as like a slow rolling snowball that like has to keep getting bigger and continue to build on past success versus just a one-off success that just happened to happen. If we don't continue to build on that and create more of the support, these resources, like these peers, it is in a somewhat fragile state. It continues, it's not as if it's, super mature as far as the whole ecosystem goes and all this stuff. But it's definitely grown a lot, and it's really critical for all of us to continue to invest and build that and not take it for granted, because there's a lot of potential there, but it's, we're still not super mature in different ways.
Well, Forrest, that snowball analogy is perfect for Wisconsin.
Yep.
It makes a lot of sense, right? Because it is fragile and it can melt, and you want to continue to grow, so that snowball rolling down the hill. So kind of a variant on the next question, which we're going to ask, why companies succeed or fail. I think a variant of that is, how important is it to have all of you sort of in one space, in one ecosystem, and particularly Starting Block, right? Nora and Forrest, you guys really have done an amazing job. Pam, several people on this call that have helped build this. How important is it for companies, young companies, to have spaces where they're connecting, whether or not it's traditional spaces like actual office spaces like Starting Block, or just third spaces, the cafes, the different spaces that people run into each other and create innovation? How important is that for companies to succeed in an ecosystem like ours?
Can I take that one? I think it's really important. It's incredibly important. And I'll give you just kind of a really fun example. We had a new member join about a week and a half ago, and he walked in and he paid for a day pass, and he sat down and he started to just take in everything Starting Block around him. And by the end of the day, he had met somebody who could help him with accounting work. He had joined Capital Entrepreneurs. He had had lunch with a group of people and started talking about a bunch of different things that he wanted to do for his business. And after one 8-hour day, he was completely connected with some of the resources that he really needed. And so I think having all of the things in one place is the perfect way to not only grow your business, but spark creativity and partnerships. And it's really a great example of Starting Block doing its job. That's why we do the work that we do, is so that we can connect people to the resources that they need to be successful. And, the same thing is true in our walls and outside. If we can make things as easy as possible for people to connect to the resources that they need in order to grow their businesses, everybody benefits.
I would agree with Nora for sure. I think, Forrest used the term nucleus a little bit ago in terms of really making sure that there was, a solid foundation to the ecosystem. And I think at the end of the day, the nucleus is the most important when the ecosystem is small, right? That's ultimately how you are able to grow the best traction. Ultimately, as entrepreneurs, we only really need 3 things, and it's access to resources, access to capital, but, ultimately physical space is, I think, a very, very important one, remote world or not.
Yeah, and I would tie that all back together, like to community too. Like you want to be part of a community that is, whether that's directly like entrepreneurial peers or other folks that you like to be part of, from neighborhood community perspective. Like that's kind of the core. You want to be part of something like a social fabric in general, and feel supported around you.
Jason, I got a couple messages in the chat that were kind of along some of these lines of this thread that we're pulling, which is really kind of, to the next question on the list was, why do companies succeed? Why do they fail broadly? But I think more specifically, people are wondering what we can do to create what other resources you all need that you feel like you're not getting in this market. Specifically, a lot of folks in DMI or in other kind of, more traditional office services don't know that your companies exist. How can we help you get the word out? Is it important that we know it? And Tara had asked too specifically about, for student entrepreneurs, how can we make sure that they know about the resources that exist in Madison? How can we help you in that? That was very long. That was like 6 questions.
It's a good question. Good questions. Yeah.
Many.
Yeah,
so I think kind of resources, if you're looking for space, you've got that. I mean, Nora's got you covered, but we also have a lot of other office space that we'd love to get folks into downtown. The money, that certainly is something that I know you've always need, but what are the other resources that really DMI and downtown can make sure that we have for you?
Yeah, I mean, I can start. I guess I really like to think about it like a kind of like a funnel, the young startups all the way to Epic, and Exact Sciences, right? And where are the areas that we're really, really strong in that funnel? And ultimately, where are the areas that maybe we need to bolster that funnel, right? Or maybe make it a little bit more strong. And, I think you kind of mentioned even like the student entrepreneur and a little bit. And I think, it's so surprising to me, there's over 70 startups every single year, that are started inside of the university. And that's a mind blowing number of startups when you ultimately really think about it at the end of the day. And, I think one of those pieces is, getting the, students information about resources, right? At that stage, the things that are ultimately really important to them are, angel funding, right? And seed capital. I think that those are absolutely mammoth objectives that we need to continue to work on, making sure that we're providing, and actually just making sure the connections, right? I think that the deal flow to probably the number of angel investors could probably be even stronger than it currently is. And it's about making sure that angel investors are getting that information about the exciting companies that are coming out of places like the university or Starting Block. And then I think I would say probably our greatest drain that we have is really at, companies that are similar into stage to maybe the ones that we're at right now. We actually were just able to raise a successful financing round. It took us, a couple of months like it does for most companies. But at the end of the day, our lead investor was, a venture capital firm out in LA. Right. And we actually really looked very, very hard, at the Midwest, tried to find kind of the creator economy, consumer technology VCs. But most of them in the Midwest they're follow-on VCs. They're not necessarily lead VCs. And so for us, we had to go outside of Madison to find a lead investor that would, that would write our term sheet so that we could come back to Madison and find people that would ultimately follow on. And so I think, those two critical stages of a young tech company, are really the areas where I think that it's all about increasing communication to those companies and out of those companies. And then obviously I think capital, I think going back to what Forrest said, we should be proud of how much we've grown in Madison as it relates to being able to bring capital to our tech startups at various stages of their growth. But it doesn't mean we should, have a blind eye to the fact that Wisconsin is still, even compared to other Midwest states, relatively far behind in our ability to supply startups with the necessary capital from the necessary investors and resources that we have. And so definitely a lot of progress that we've seen, but definitely a few key areas, I think, as it relates to finding better mediums to communicate resources, both inside and outside of the startup ecosystem. And then absolutely figuring out how we can continue to, supply our startups with the necessary resources in terms of capital that they may need, especially at different stages when we do have such a strong, angel investment community, in Madison.
Yeah, I would say, the nice thing about capital is you can import that, and that's the same. Most of our investors are actually out of state too, and this is all about connections, and especially in the remote kind of area, that makes it even easier to do that type of stuff as a priority. And I think the other thing that I've noticed over the last number of years is that out of area investors no longer view being located in Madison as a risk, the expectation historically was, oh, if I invest in you, you're going to move to San Francisco or wherever it is. Now, I think more investors are seeing places like Madison and Madison in particular as a benefit just from like the access to quality talent and cost of and the cost structure of it. And then so that's one angle, and I'll definitely echo what Max was saying on the UW side of it. Like the connections and the thing of that as a funnel is huge. I mean, the more we can do to continue to strengthen that pipeline and keeping more, getting UW folks more in the loop for what's happening in Madison. That's always been a thing it's always been a challenge, and continue to improve that funnel of emerging entrepreneurs, or even folks that just want to work at a company and just don't even realize the tech or startup places exist in Madison to come to. That's an effort with Capital Entrepreneurs have done over the last number of years. So it basically started a startup fair to try to get more opportunities at startup companies in front of students on campus. And that's a big piece of it as well. So yeah.
Can I add something?
Oh yeah, go.
I just, both Max and Forrest talked a little about people, and I think right now with the way the economy is going, finding talent is really an important thing. And as I see it, you certainly, I love my recruiting friends, but, if we can get people to these companies without paying, the fees of a recruiter via networking and whatnot, that would be a resource, and that would be something that would help a lot. I come from Chicago, and I was there involved in a lot of networking groups that helped share job leads with people. And there's nothing like that here in Madison. And I don't know how that would happen, but it's just something that's always been on my mind, how to let people know what, easier rather than, yes, LinkedIn work, but could there be a central resource for that?
And that talent piece is critical. And that's probably one of the bigger pieces, especially as companies at different stages of it, especially like at the nascent founder level stage, like getting connected to the right other peer founders, but then also as you're growing and especially kind of seeing different levels of success and growth, like you need to start to bring on more talented, more experienced, more senior talent. And that's really challenging to do. And historically, that's been more challenging to do in Madison, especially in the more niche like tech and like for us games roles. But again, there's opportunities with the remote aspect of stuff to be able to bring in that talent to the team, but still have the team primarily based in Madison.
Right. I mean, if we want to build up Madison, we want those people to be here as much as possible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think there's also an opportunity to, for other entities in Madison that are not directly involved with the tech scene right now to be involved by having specialties or specifically curated services or mentorship opportunities within different things where they're experts. So if you're an expert in marketing, if you're an expert in human resources, if you're an expert in financial or banking or loans, there are lots of different opportunities to work with entrepreneurs and talk to them about some of your services and provide support. So I think creative approaches and carefully curated services for folks in tech is also a way that local Madison entities can be involved.
You all are doing well with answering our questions here. I think, it's good to have the fact that, you've got three things you're all sort of looking at, right? We need emerging entrepreneurs in this market for the downtown tech sector and the emerging tech sector in general to succeed, capital, and then in talent. So I think, we want to make sure we've got enough time for questions from the audience. We've got a couple more questions here, but if you do have questions, please fire those into the chat and Ann and I can ask those. But I think that all kind of ties up for me is what is the future of the downtown tech sector? I mean, what direction are we headed and what are you going to see here in the future in the next few years?
I guess I can start. I don't have a crystal ball, certainly, Jason, but based on what we're seeing at Starting Block, I would say I'm predicting only good things. I think there's going to be even more people coming up with great ideas and starting businesses. I think there's going to be more need for support and capital and all of the things that we've talked about than ever before. I think there will be opportunities for a lot of different entities to continue to expand. We have so many different entrepreneurs at Starting Block who are growing their teams every single year, like quite a bit rapidly, to the point where we're going to have some people graduating out of Starting Block and moving on to other things, I think. So I see, not only just based on the data of people actually coming into the building, we take really careful and accurate records of who's coming in, when they're using the space. We're at an ultimate high over the last couple of days, the most people that have been in the space in 12 to 15 months. So I see only positive things and lots of growth.
Yeah, I pray that it has to do, it ends up having to do with more startups. You know, I think that it's like so critical. You know, it's at the end of the day, like the dream is that it's the same, the same type of relationship that, Palo Alto or Los Altos has with, Stanford, right? Like not just even the specific connection with the university, but the full ecosystem ultimately coming together, right? Capital and research and entrepreneurship and being maybe a little bit more industry agnostic, but just in general, right? More startups is going to help more small businesses in downtown. It's going to create more of that traction, and ultimately it's going to create more stories that hopefully we can share outside of the Midwest and outside of Wisconsin, that are going to draw more and more people into the state.
And I would kind of look at it as like maybe almost like the entering kind of the third chapter of like the Madison tech ecosystem in some ways, like where the first one kind of started in like the late 90s with places like Sonic Foundry kind of era, to kind of get kind of the core tech going. And then like about 10 years ago with kind of the second sort of chapter with like kind of companies like Purblue and all the other kind of entrepreneurial stuff that exists now that kind of got seeded around that time, like Capital Entrepreneurs and Forward Fest and those kind of places. And kind of now feeling like over the last year, kind of there's like this next kind of chapter we're kind of stepping into, and kind of what that looks like. And I think in general, I do think the remote work aspect of things is going to have a pretty significant impact to a lot of those pieces. And again, I think in an opportunistic way, but also in a potentially risk way. I think in one thing will be is I think you're going to see a lot more blended approaches and blended types of companies in both entrepreneurial early stage stuff of like, that strong pipeline of new companies forming, either from UW or founders relocating to Madison to start companies because of the quality of life and the strong community they want, and they can relocate here and start their company here. But the other piece too is like, I think we're starting to see this, but I think we'll see more of like remote employees from other tech companies being based here even more so, and not having to have a satellite office in Madison to be based here, I think. So we'll start to get kind of more blended, a lot more blending of different tech employees from all over the country, from companies all over the country being based here, and kind of get sort of more of that mixing of just all this like presence of these other tech companies in Madison from just their a couple employees or an employee. I think there's also potential benefits around there where you don't have to have a satellite office here to be based here. And I think there's potential and opportunities there for what that means too for the tech scene as a whole.
And can I ask Forrest a quick follow-up before you jump in?
Yeah, I've got a couple from folks. But
one quick follow-up.
Keep them going. And I will say, folks, if you're sending me chat messages, feel free to put your hand up literally or the little icon, and you can ask it out loud too.
Forrest, really interesting last point about, everything has changed. Look, we could be in Madison right now. We're on Zoom. You can do so much more virtually. How much does it matter that there's a great ecosystem here in Madison for other talent to come in the market that might be working for a company in Palo Alto or New York or wherever? How much does that livability and that downtown, that important downtown, does that matter when people are making these choices? I mean, they can move to any other city really in the world now and live. And so is Madison a good position to be able to grab some of that talent from other companies?
Yeah, I really think so. I mean, I think that's something that we've always seen as a strength of like being able to like, the boomerang effect of like be able to pull employees back from the West Coast and stuff like that. But now you don't have to have now we don't have to have the physical company here. Like people can just choose to relocate just for their whatever reasons they want, for quality of life reasons. I think a lot of that does come back to like where their roots are, where their families are, and that's what we've seen from even our employee base and stuff is either some employees shifting around or like wanting to actively relocate to Madison just because they have the ties here, they have the family here, or the and I think that's like a critical piece of like those family bonds plus a really good community that you want to live in. I think that's I think those are like really critical ingredients to that again, with the remote piece, there's so much more flexibility for folks to optimize just for that. It's no longer optimizing about where your job is physically based. It's really comes down to the quality of life and the, the community and family you want to be around, essentially, and those kind of connections.
Well, thanks. I mean, I think that's just a great point. Nora, you know much about that, in your Viroqua region and with the great quality of life there and the amazing talent that comes into a very small area. So that is important. Sorry, Ann, I would cut you off in the last question.
No worries at all. What are some of the lessons learned as you look at other cities and similar places as Madison? Obviously we love our quality of life. What can we do to kind of preserve it as we grow? What are the risks there?
I mean, I think one of them is just housing cost stuff. I mean, that's definitely a concern to be really mindful of, and making sure that that's one of the big positives about Madison is like the quality of life plus cost of living is manageable. But I think if there's definitely a risk if we don't keep housing costs reasonable, that's going to be a problematic. And it I think it really goes down to supply and making sure supply keeps up with demand as a core of that is definitely one area.
Yeah. You hear that from a lot of sectors.
I think in general, though, I will say, I mean, in terms of, our competitive advantages, I think by far the one that we should be shouting from the rooftops as much as we can is the quality of life in Madison. I totally agree with Forrest that there is, so many people, even I have a sister who graduated from UC Santa Barbara, is getting her PhD in Berkeley. And, she's always wanted to go to California, be outside of the state. And, now that she's there and especially with everything that I think's happened over the course of the last, year or two with the pandemic, she's excited about her, eventual return, to Madison and to the Midwest. And it's absolutely because of the quality of life is so high. I think housing costs and other things play a huge part of that. But I think, the leading indicator that we're seeing with so many even millennials that are either returning or coming to Madison for the first time is absolutely about the quality of life. And so in terms of the things that we should continue to be promoting, to even drive, even if it's indirectly or secondarily, the tech or the entrepreneurial ecosystem, is absolutely that Madison is a phenomenal place to live, and I think that is something that we can continue to double down on and use as an exceptional recruitment tool, whether it's for employees outside of the state of Wisconsin or whether it's even for startups in general. And I think we're seeing more and more of that. I think the pandemic has prompted that a little bit, and I think that is definitely something that we can use as an advantage, to our general recruitment of talent and people to the Madison ecosystem.
Yeah, and kind of I'll jump in on that too. Like in some ways, it's almost flipping the economic development model to be direct to consumer. Of like we're now it's sort of about directly attracting the individual employees and people is like the end game. In some ways, it's not B2B. It's not about convincing the companies to locate here. It's really just focusing on the people in a lot of ways. But the one, again, that's an opportunity because Madison has the quality of life thing we can market and pitch, and like how else can we do that to attract folks? But the other side of it is like pretty much all the current economic incentive models rely on companies physically being based here and have their core employee base here as well. And I think the remote piece kind of breaks that to an extent where like literally, through venture debt programs and other kind of programs like that exist through entities, they have requirements that over half of your employee base has to be based in Wisconsin. And if they're not, you have to pay stuff back. And what do you do with that to adapt to a more remote world where now, companies have to maintain over, their core of their footprint in the state versus not, and it really kind of gives them a lot less flexibility to kind of grow where they need to. So there's, definitely kind of a risk side of it too, to look at what we do with those models, to potentially judge them, but also the opportunity of, it is more direct to consumer it's all about attracting individual people here directly versus the business piece.
I think the other thing that's really important is just the strength of the Madison community in general and the community vibe, the willingness of businesses to help other businesses, the willingness of people to be mentors and investors. I think that it's very unique and very concentrated in Madison. And I think that's an important part of the success and the all other things that are great about Madison.
We have a hand up from one of my favorite New York boomerangers, co-boomerangers, Sarah Milestone.
It's right back at you. But so my question, I work in the arts, and I'm curious, sort of in this tech ecosystem, how arts and culture fits into your definition of quality of life, and what sort of interesting things to do after work, how important that is to attracting people here, and how you use the arts and culture in those conversations.
Oh, I think it's just massively important, Sarah. It's such a good point. I mean, I think the big reason, one of the biggest reasons why, Loom has continued to stay in Wisconsin is because nobody understands how exceptional the talent, even from an artist and musician perspective, is in Wisconsin. Like, it's such an underrated point. We almost never talk about it. But I think outside of there's a reason why.
Let's talk about it.
Yeah, no, there's a reason why Austin, Texas is the sister city to Madison, right? And I think for Madison it is because we actually have one of the strongest live entertainment, for the size of our city, one of the strongest live entertainment cities in the United States. I think we've seen it even with like the Sylvie, right? The new venue that's come up in the last the last couple of years. We're literally right next to Starting Block downtown, obviously, on campus. But even in terms of, if there's one thing we almost have as many bars in Madison, it's venues, and stuff like that, right? All the way from, places like, Memorial Union, to actually some of even these larger venues. I think there's such a strong arts and culture. And I actually think that people really recognize that, or at least the people that do live here. And I think it's a really, even when I talk to my friends, right, people even between the ages of 20 and 35, right, it's being able to be part of that experience in downtown Madison. One, I think has really sucked since the pandemic, but outside of that, I think it's a huge driver for why people really also why people want to live closer to downtown. I think that's also such a great point, right? We're seeing so many more people, moving out to Fitchburg, moving out to Middleton, but I think we still do a very good job of attracting talent and keeping really just, all of these general demographics really more closely tight knit in the downtown ecosystem. And I think it is because there is such a strong, arts and cultural focus around, the things outside of just work, but also life. And I think it's definitely something that we really, really enjoy as even a company being down here.
Yeah. Can I ask a follow-up question? So I hear you talking a lot about live music, and that makes a lot of sense. Are the museums, are performing arts venues on your radar? Is that part of that arts and culture to you, or is it really music?
No, I think it's absolutely whether it's even the farmers market, right? The Taste of Madison, the art fair on the square. I think it's all of it, right? And I think that is something that we just do any time that the Capitol is blocked off is a good day in Madison. And we see so many people driving there. I actually think now also, though, even going back to like the music side of it, Avenue Club, who's been on East Wash for a while, it has shut down. And I think they're building a $25 million, symphony orchestra building down there as well now. As don't quote me on that, I'm definitely not the expert in the field, but I think that we do see so much of that. I think it's something that we do such an exceptional job of in Madison, and definitely should continue to promote it as much as we can.
And I wanted to add too, Sarah, that Starting Block now has an artist in residence, and we're working very closely with Dane Arts. So we see a very direct correlation between arts and music and the tech world, and some really incredible partnerships that can come from working together. So we're starting to slowly explore some of those things, and it's been incredibly successful so far. Dane Arts now pays for artists to come and use the space and interact with some of the other folks at Starting Block, and some really cool partnerships and some very interesting synergies have come from that. So we're really excited about continuing to explore what that looks like, and how the arts and music can benefit the tech world in a really meaningful way.
Great.
I gotta say, Max, your knowledge of downtown is very good, because yes, it is the Wisconsin Youth Symphony Orchestra who's building a new building at the Avenue Bars. So thank you for knowing downtown. We appreciate it. You were right there. And I got to say, I mean, just what's happening next to all of these things on East Wash, right? I mean, you have the Madison Youth Arts Center, Forward Madison, and just an active Bree Stevens with, the Radicals and East all football team. And I was down there for gallery night and, Art and Lit Lab and all these different things that are happening feet from all of your places is pretty amazing. But I think we've got a question from our good friend, Tara. Good morning, Tara.
Morning. I love hearing about promoting the quality of life, all the things that we have going on here in Madison. However, I do want to know from each of you, what resources specifically did you use in Madison that was a game changer, maybe for your business or your sector, that you think that we should really be promoting or boosting or expanding and putting money into?
I mean, I'm so biased. I think that Starting Block is a massive one. I'm sure even like Nora said later today, we're doing an event at Starting Block for all of the amazing donors that have helped us get to where we are. And it's going to be definitely a really, really exciting event. There's a lot of really great co-working in Madison, and I think that physical space is such an interesting one. I think it's obviously an area that we want to be able to continue to invest in, right? Even as we think, the flex membership side of it is so exciting. We have individual entrepreneurs or even just individual people that work remotely that want a space outside of their house, to be able to come and work at. It's definitely a very niche example of the larger question. But I definitely think that, you double down on the areas that we're strong in, and places like Starting Block. Even the relationship between small businesses in Madison and the university is an area where I always am, really wanting us to continue to spend more time in, right? There's the only way to keep people in here, and so they don't have to leave to go somewhere else before they ultimately come back, is to make sure that they're really well connected with the amazing businesses that we do have in Madison after they graduate. Not exactly sure how, we can use financial resources to ultimately make that happen, but definitely a few core areas that I think we can continue to invest in. And I'm sure that Forrest and Nora both have some thoughts on that as well.
Can I add something on that, Max? I mean, I think that Loom is such a good example. You're in your fourth space here at Starting Block, or third or fourth? I mean, as you've grown, as you've grown, you've moved around. And
yeah, and we have 20 full-time employees now. I think we have 12 of them that are in Madison, 8 of them that are remote. I actually never would have hired a remote employee until the pandemic happened, and then it kind of forced us to do it. Then I realized how wonderful having remote employees actually was. But yeah, we're in our 4th office now, and I think every year we've doubled our team. And so yeah, that's a great point, Scott.
And you also, I mean, you guys have been in person through the pandemic for the most part, right?
Yeah, we took probably 6 months, 6 months off right in the, I think, real heart of it, or at least at the beginning of it. But I was back here as soon as we possibly could be.
You were one of the first.
Yeah, well, I think our employees would have wanted me to keep them remote a little bit longer, but I was really excited to get back. And so, yeah, we hopped back on the train as quickly as we could.
Yeah. And I think that's exactly when we were, designing the thesis around Starting Block and looking at the needs, that's exactly the use case we wanted to optimize for, because as experiencing ourselves as growing startups, the space piece of it was always a challenge where as a startup, you don't know what your next 3 to 6 months looks like. And then, in the commercial real estate side of things, you're being asked to sign a 3, 5, 7-year lease. And it's that's a whole disconnect of different worlds there. And that's where, we wanted to design Starting Block to be really super flexible and friendly to especially early stage growing companies, where they can, exactly what Max and Loom did, is grow from a small little pod to a small office to a bigger office, and do that super easily, super flexibly. And I think that's, I think one thing that's going to, going forward here, I think that's that expanded that model further to more commercial spaces and companies as they need more flexibility, especially with more remote folks and having kind of bursts of need for if they want to bring employees, more remote employees on site and have more kind of on-site time, but yet have more employees working from home or remote. I think there's definitely, potentially need there for more flexibility in general with the physical space aspect, and again, an opportunity around that too. but it is different. And I think back to the original question, I think just the core thing is really that community and the connections is what the core foundation is. And like the more we can strengthen the types of communities of people that we want to grow and invest in, like that's like the foundational piece for me. And that's what I think was so valuable with like groups like Capital Entrepreneurs, especially back 10 years ago when we first started that, is like establishing those core foundations, those core connections to build that fabric of, hey, I have peers that are doing similar stuff that I am here. I don't have to go to San Francisco to find this similar support or similar resources. So
yeah, well, and Tara, I really appreciate that question too, because what I would like to offer anybody on the call today, please just come see us at Starting Block. I'd love to host you for a day. Come and check out some of the awesome meetings. Capital Entrepreneurs is hosting tasty topics. Come meet our entrepreneur and artist in residence. Come meet some of there it is. Look at the day pass. See, there you go. Awesome. So, please just come see us and check out the energy and, the positivity and all of the good things that are happening, and then see how you might like to be involved. Maybe you'd like to be a mentor, maybe, who knows, but please, I guess my dog is deciding to growl and bark right now. Sorry about that if anyone's hearing that. But anyway, please come check things out and let me give you a tour or my team, and let's talk about ways that you can support entrepreneurs.
Jason, thank you for kicking this to me. I have a drill going behind me, so I don't know how much you guys can hear. I have no dogs. Picking up Nora, where you left off, I think that one thing we're learning as DMI and as our tent expands is we really do have to meet different communities where they are. And I think we would all welcome the opportunity individually and maybe as a group to have an event at Starting Block. And maybe you and I and Jason could talk offline. Maybe even this committee could meet, even if the topic isn't even tech related, if we could find a way for this group to get in your space. So let's talk about that. But in the meantime, I think we were gonna end the session with the last question from our list, which was really kind of what's your dream for downtown? Jason, what were you thinking this? I mean, I'm thinking it's like you close your eyes and in 5 years you open them, and what does it look like and what's different than today?
Exactly.
So I'd love to hear folks' thoughts on that as we close this out. And I'm gonna mute because I think you could hear this drilling.
I think it's seeing the snowball get as big as it can possibly be, going back to Forest Point originally. More startups, more capital, more people hearing about all of the startups and capital so that we attract more startups and more capital. Eventually, like Forrest said, we don't necessarily need those VCs to be based here to go out and be able to raise from them. But in 5 years, if those VCs are here and we're able to be raising from them, that's a future that definitely gets me really excited.
And I would say definitely vibrancy is probably the main word I would describe it, as like making sure, the downtown core stays vibrant as a good place to want to just go and hang out and feel proud to show people and like to take people and, take friends and stuff like that. And making sure it's approachable and accessible, I think is definitely key pieces there as well. And then, also figuring out ways we can also increase connections to Madison for folks outside, both just from a community virtual perspective, but also like, everything from like flights and stuff too is also a part of that, of making Madison accessible to physically get here easy is a part of it. And making sure, the city as a whole stays livable, the costs of living are reasonable. There's good, schools and all this kind of stuff, like the whole quality of life thing and vibrancy are probably the two core things there. Yeah.
I think for me, it's about access and opportunity. So I want to make sure that all people have an opportunity to pursue their dreams, and that anything that Starting Block and any of our partners, anything that can happen from DMI and some other folks doing good work in Madison, just to make sure that a membership to Starting Block or the opportunity to work within our networks or with other people doing good work in Madison is possible and accessible. So figuring out ways to create that access and eliminate any potential barriers to entry or success is something I'm really, really passionate about. So the more the merrier, and anything that we can do to encourage entrepreneurship is something I'm a huge fan of.
and building bridges around that too. I would add to different areas,
Totally.
different communities.
Perfect
Yeah.
forest. Yep.
All right. As we close this out, Jason, we had a couple other announcements on the agenda. Maybe we said these at the beginning, but maybe we should say them again.
Yes.
Wednesday tonight is that open meeting. And next Wednesday, the Madison Milwaukee Exchange are coming up. And then our next
Two Wednesdays, multiple, two
I'm
Wednesdays.
sorry, 2 Wednesdays,
Yeah.
December. And then shortly after that, we'll have our next DMI EDC meeting. So stay tuned for details on that as we figure them out. So with that, thank you, panelists. This was awesome. I hope you had fun.
Thank you.
Forrest, you can let us
Thanks.
know whether you want us to post it or not. I know it's a tough crowd. And I think we're adjourned. I heard one person jump in. Was there something I missed, or are we adjourned? Okay. Thank you. Have a great Wednesday.
Thanks,
Bye,
Thank you
everybody.
so much,
Thanks,
everybody.
everyone.
Starting block. Have fun with your donor.
Thank
Good luck
you.
in your event today.
Thanks.
Thank
Bye,
you.
everyone.